The story kicks off on a dimly lit city street, where a faint glow highlights a pretty bizarre little convenience store. Inside the shop, a young guy is stretching to grab an item from the cooler, completely surrounded by plushy unicorn toys. Next, he pulls out a bottle of cola, gripping it like his life depends on it. Second, guessing his drink choice for a split second, our MC quickly decides he made the right call. As the bottle shakes slightly, the dark liquid swirls inside. Right then, a system voice chimes in to praise his awesome choice, while flashes of intense boss fights cross his mind. The dude's eyes go wide, completely sucked into the hype of the moment. Brimming with pride, he calls himself a certified dopamine junkie, always chasing that next extreme rush. But to make sense of this weird situation and the heavy vibe on the floor, we gotta rewind the clock by 1 hour. Flashing back to the recent past, his fingers are flying across the keyboard as he types out that exact same catchphrase. Rocking headphones in his dark bedroom, the MC doubles down on his hardcore addiction to epic thrills. His shelves are packed with short-lived obsessions, ranging from pop star merch to hardcore strategy guides. On top of that, extreme sports gear is tossed all over the place, proving he's literally tried a bit of everything. He even threw skydiving into his daily routine just to chase that extra hit of adrenaline. But eventually, the fun wore off, and his hands freeze on the keyboard as he realizes the boredom has totally crept back in. It was during this major slump that he decided to grind online games, only to realize the snooze fest was still real. Yanking off his headset and staring a hole into his monitor, the guy decides to give it one last shot, accepting that gaming was his final lifeline. On his phone screen, 31 missed calls remind him of how much he's pushed his mom away because of his gaming binge. Even with that guilt weighing him down, the dude admits that old habits are insanely hard to kick. Desperate for heavier stimulation, the MC dives headfirst into the digital chaos of the game. With way too much free time on his hands, he ended up mastering every single survival mode in the most chaotic lobbies. During these super sweaty matches, one game in particular gave him the absolute biggest adrenaline spike possible. The screen showed a lone character staring out over the totally wrecked ruins of a huge metropolis. To really grasp the depth of the game, the starter system drops some lore about how the original plot went down. It all started when a massive meteor impact threw Earth into a brutal, unforgiving ice age. Thanks to that disaster, the vast majority of humanity met a super tragic end. But after a crazy long time of freezing and struggling, an interglacial period with chill temperatures finally blessed the planet. Jumping on this new chance, the survivors teamed up to build safe zones and keep civilization kicking. At least, that's what the game's official lore feeds the noobs starting their adventure. The world map features 9 split regions, rocking wild names like unicorn, beer, and cola. Slouching in front of his PC, the MC mutters that even this strategy angle was starting to lose its flavor. The game lets you pick any starting zone, except the knife zone, and throws you into the shoes of a 10-year-old kid. Whoever makes it past the early game has to grind insanely hard for the real apocalypse before turning 20 years old. The reason for the rush is that, on the exact day your character hits that age, the chaos comes back with a vengeance. That's the crunch time when a second doomsday wipes out the metropolis, wrecking everything folks had rebuilt. This early phase of prepping and growing up is honestly just the tutorial for the main event. The real fun kicks off right after, and our boy decides to speedrun the boring stuff on his first go. When the second disaster officially drops, the only goal left is literally just to stay in the game. The player is forced to clash with ruthless raiders from different zones, proving why your starting area actually matters. Basically, the more toxic your spawn point is in the virtual world, the crazier the hazards you gotta face. On the flip side, spawning in a nightmare zone lets your character max out the absolute best stats possible. Plus, the NPCs in the hidden knife zone have a reputation for being completely unhinged. If those aggro enemies spot a player from an easier zone, they'll try to send them back to the lobby instantly. It was exactly these wild, broken features that kept the MC hooked on the game for so long. But with his hands resting on the keys, he knows deep down that even this epic run is wrapping up today. Smashing the button with purpose, the guy lets out a huge sigh of relief for finally finishing his massive grind. The monitor flashes the platinum trophy for clearing every single route, including the super creepy and locked knife zone. Staying quiet for a sec, he just zones out at the screen, soaking in the vibe of his solo victory. Grabbing his phone, the hype comes rushing back. and he decides it's time to drop some serious knowledge on the community. Without missing a beat, the gamer starts uploading his ultimate strategy guide for the hardest server region. Since he always wanted other peeps to vibe with the game, he made a hobby out of posting walkthroughs on the forums. Seconds later, his phone buzzes, letting him know someone is already creeping on his new post. A user named Home Defender is the first to reply, and the MC cracks a joke about how chronically online the dude is. Reading the comment, he sees the guy asking if it's even possible to spawn in a zone where everyone is so incredibly toxic. Normally he'd just mute the haters, but he decides to let this cheap shot slide for a minute. Meanwhile, a flood of notifications pops up asking how he even unlocked that impossible hidden area. He claps back saying it's easy. You just gotta 100% the endings for all the other zones, but ends up getting flamed for it. The forum trolls keep roasting him, calling him delusional for thinking anyone could actually pull off those sweaty steps. Silence takes over the dark room as the guy reads the replies, feeling his patience totally running out. Absolutely tilted by the community's lack of brain cells, he announces he's blocking the clown and shuts down the thread. On the other end, the blocked user loses his mind when he realizes he got kicked out of the chat so fast. Ignoring the whiners crying about his guides being too hard, the MC just keeps scrolling his feed. Luckily, he spots a thank you comment, making him realize all his sweating wasn't a total waste. Leaning back in his chair, the guy figures that at least a few absolute legends are actually using his crazy strats. Burned out on the drama, he gets up from his setup and decides he's done arguing with randoms online for the day. Staring at the game's main menu one last time, the young guy announces he is officially retiring from the grind. Strolling down the bright city street, he feels kind of empty and lost without his favorite hobby holding him down. Walking with his hands in his pockets, the dude realizes his dopamine levels are already crashing super hard. The itch to find a new thrill hits him out of nowhere, making him wonder where he could find something to cure his boredom. Right at that moment, his eyes pop wide open as he spots something super glitchy in the middle of a normal street. Standing in front of an obnoxiously bright convenience store, he finds it super weird that the shop is chilling right there. Peeking through the glass, the guy sees perfect rows of snacks, sodas, cold ones, and chicken. When he spots kitchen knives chilling right next to plushy unicorns, he's totally mind blown that the place looks exactly like a safe zone from the game. Tripping out, the guy whispers that there's zero chance a game without a localized server would do a promo crossover like this. Snapping a pic of the spot, he figures the owner is probably just a hardcore fan who set it up for the memes. Dropping the pic in the forum, the young guy decides to leak the location for free, sending the address to Home Defender, who had been begging for it in the comments. At the register, the cashier asks if he's gonna buy the cola, snapping the dude out of his thoughts so he can nod real quick. Staring at the bottle, the MC wonders if he was being judged for acting like a tourist just to buy something so cheap. But that anxiety vanishes fast, swapped out for a super sketchy gut feeling that something in there was seriously off. Realizing there's no barcode on the wrapper, he gets a jump scare as shadowy figures randomly pop up behind him. In a split second, a system pop-up hits his vision saying it was a god-tier choice, right as the whole room violently shatters. Finally opening his eyes, the guy realizes he's dumped on the floor of a freezing alleyway and is completely clueless. Getting on his feet, he checks out his white clothes and his tiny body proportions, mind blown by how broken reality just got. Realizing he got nerfed back into a kid, the boy gets super hyped, knowing he just unlocked a brand new, ultra-pure source of adrenaline. Close by, a blonde kid starts throwing a massive tantrum, complaining about spawning into this totally annoying and chaotic universe. Peeping the snowy biome, the little blonde dude instantly connects the dots and realizes the MC also picked the cola back at the shop. Squinting at the guy like he's sus, he asks if his online handle happened to be Kutch Potato. Flexing about the toxic forum beef, the blonde kid gets snarky, asking if his new misfortune buddy was some kind of internet weirdo. Venting about how toxic internet culture is these days, he straight up demands to know the MC's username. Caught off guard by the random interrogation, the dark-haired kid just points at himself in a moment of pure wait. What? In his head, the MC realizes it would be a massive throw to drop his real identity to the exact hater he just blocked. Seeing no other way to dodge the drama, he decides to borrow someone else's gamertag for a hot minute. Staring the blonde kid dead in the eye, The boy says with zero hesitation that his forum name was Home Defender. The blonde kid calls Cap instantly, saying it was obviously a weak lie, but pretty soon they both start freaking out over their insane new reality. Panicking when they confirm they are literally trapped in the game, the blonde loses it, demanding to know why that user leaked the sketchy address in the first place. That's when the MC does the math, figuring out the blocked guy posted the store's location online purely out of spite. Watching his partner freak out, he guesses the poor dude just went to check the store for the memes and got a Zekide by accident. But if his theory was on point, the whole situation was way more cursed than it looked. Thinking back to the drink, the guy figures that a bunch of other randoms who grabbed the secret items probably got dragged into this nightmare too. Factoring in the other map zones, he quickly realizes the future is packed with hardcore PvP fights against players from different areas. The worst part was knowing for a fact that bumping into real players would 100% lead to sweaty, winner-takes-all deathmatches. Shaking his head to clear the bad vibes, he decides to just focus on the present, since not getting eliminated was the ultimate priority right now. Cooling down a bit, the blonde kid hyped up suggests they try using standard gamer mechanics to get an edge. The kid starts yapping non-stop about farming magical loot, spending stat points, and opening UI panels in the middle of nowhere. Super hyped about the strat, the blonde kid screams system commands at the top of his lungs, praying some epic fantasy stuff would pop up. Awkward silence totally takes over the alley, making it crystal clear that absolutely nothing happened after all that yelling. Salty as hell, the kid tries screaming every basic RPG term he can remember to force the menu to open. Dropping to his knees in the snow, he takes the massive L, realizing there was zero magical hand holding in this hardcore server. Mad about spawning in a danger zone with a squishy kid's hitboxes, the blonde boy rages about the total lack of starter gear. Hearing the kid hype himself up as some pure soul, the MC lets out a tired sigh, slightly regretting all the trolling he did online. Too drained to keep crying about it, the partner just plops down on the ground, admitting that raging wasn't gonna fix the glitch. Curious about the meta, the blonde kid asks how far the MC actually made it through the cola zone in his playthroughs. Deep down, the guy feels super smug knowing he already won. 100%ed every single possible and broken rote in this mess. But since he's the only player on the global server with that insane flex, he decides to fake a lower rank to dodge suspicion. Lying without breaking a sweat, he says he only made it to the unicorn zone, leaving his buddy absolutely shook. Calling BS on that, the blonde says basically no one made it past that brutal stage without using those sweaty guides from the web. Suddenly connecting the dots, he realizes the legendary OP player was definitely trapped in this server too, and desperately wants to track him down. Noticing how much trivia the kid knew about his clout, the MC finds it super weird that a hater would be keeping such close tabs. Remembering how fast the guy used to reply to his threads, the young guy starts thinking maybe the beef wasn't actually that real. Blushing hard, the blonde kid finally folds and admits he's a massive simp for the famous player, reading literally every single guide he dropped. Hiding his face out of pure cringe from the sudden confession, the boy shyly nods, leaving the MC kind of mind blown. But the embarrassment doesn't last long, quickly turning into a face of absolute rage and bottled up salt. Looking borderline psychotic, he furiously snaps that he read everything that went down in the latest forum update. Exploding with anger, the blonde screams that he got totally falsely banned, even though he was a day one stan who liked every post the second it dropped. Stunned by the lore drop, the MC realizes the kid was just completely heartbroken over getting randomly blocked by his idol. Cursing his absolute trash RNG, the young guy sighs to himself, realizing he was stuck with his most unhinged fanboy. Seeing the kid's actual dedication, the guy ends up feeling a little bad for him and figures he's probably an okay dude underneath it all. Changing the subject to stop the cringe, the blonde takes a deep breath and locks back in on the survival game plan they needed to cook up. Looking confident as ever, the MC announces he already had a super specific cheese strat ready to bypass this whole starter zone. Without beating around the bush, he boldly claims he's going to steal the identity of the bastard son of one of the local zone bosses. In his head, he reviews the strat, which involved maxing out his rep with the ruthless warlord running the ice fields. The guy in question was known for being an absolute dictator and the overpowered boss of the military faction. Hearing this game over plan, the blonde completely panics, calling his buddy a psycho for trying to scam the most lethal NPC on the map. Trying to inject some common sense into the chat, he warns that real life is way buggier than some lines of game code. Giving zero cares about the sweaty warning, the MC just turns his back and tells his partner to find another lobby if he's gonna be a coward. Super triggered by the roast, the blonde kid chases him, swearing it wasn't fear, just basic logic about whether the cheese would actually work. Waving his hands around, the boy repeats that one tiny slip in the disguise would mean a one-way ticket to the lobby courtesy of the warlord. Relentless with the trolling, the MC keeps spamming the coward label, while the poor guy desperately tries to defend himself. Walking through the snow, the dude totally gets why his unfortunate duo partner was so reasonably freaked out. The trauma of waking up stuck in a broken world inside a squishy, defenseless kid's body was way too wild for a normal NPC to process right away. Looking at the hardcore wasteland around them, he agrees that being terrified 24/7 in a place where aggro mobs hide in every corner was the most normal meta. But despite the obvious logic and glaring red flags, a completely different vibe was starting to spark in the guy's chest. Feeling his own heart pumping, the kid realizes with massive hype that fear wasn't even in his loadout right now. The rush of actually living the chaos was filling his empty gauge, giving him a dangerous high he thought he'd never hit again. Flashing a confident grin, he tells the kid that he'd tank all the aggro himself, and that getting a game over on this crazy bet didn't bother him at all. In his adrenaline-addicted brain, the young guy theorizes that getting wiped out in this server might just be the fast travel option back home. The blonde kid goes completely pale at how cold that is, stuttering at the absolute madness of accepting a tragic end in the snow. Riding the massive dopamine wave, the MC declares the final score didn't matter, as long as the pure hype kept rolling. Totally disgusted by his duo's toxic mindset, the partner lets out a silent scream of agony at having to carry this much insanity. Swallowing his fear, the kid stands his ground and asks what his role is, since this reckless strat sounded like a solo queue mission. Thinking about his buddy's question, the MC nods that it's a solo run and says he's got the perfect quest line for him. Then, he asks if the kid had ever done his mandatory military service, but the guy totally panics, reminding him he literally just turned 20. With that data, the young guy mentally notes that this perfectly explains why he was acting like a total spoiled noob. Confused by the lore, the fanboy asks why having zero military stats would be a buff in this chaotic moment. The MC just stares at him with terrifying chill, fully aware of what the kid's end game looked like. Without dropping too many spoilers, he starts walking down the snowy road toward the center of the hub town. The crunch of their footsteps echoes through the quiet zone as they roll up on a heavy-duty stone base. Slamming the brakes outside the building, the kid freezes completely when he realizes they were about to enlist in the military. Fully panicking at the realization, his duo demands to know why they were speedrunning to an army base out of nowhere. Super chill, the MC reminds him they are basically orphans with zero loot in this universe and needed a way to not starve to death. Dropping some world lore, he explains that Earth was split into 9 safe zones to keep folks from getting wiped by lethal mobs. The apocalypse started with the first ice age disaster, triggered by a massive meteor that totally broke the human meta. After that wipe, totally new aggro mobs spawned in, forcing the survivors to adapt fast or face permadeath. Because of the ground hazards, the Unicorn Zone built their base in the sky to dodge the Earth-bound mobs. Using the same survival strat, the Beer Zone decided to completely relocate their server underwater. Aside from those two, all the other servers had to constantly grind against outside threats to keep their shields up. Getting straight to the point, the guy warns that if they joined the army now, they'd 100% get drafted into those hardcore clan wars. The game lore stated that kids under 10 could totally join these sweaty raids if they signed up at the barracks. But the harsh reality was they had no spawn point to return to and no high-level players to carry them through the frozen streets. So, the MC points out that joining the army guaranteed free shelter and food, plus gave them a tutorial on how to use weapons for the late game. Letting out a massive sigh of defeat, the fanboy agrees that keeping his HP up was top priority, even if he thought the strat was super sketchy. Super salty, he leans against the wall, asking how he was supposed to survive in a squad where he didn't understand a single word of English. It's only then that the guy remembers the tiny detail that this survival game never got an official Korean language patch. Back in the day, to grind the game and drop guides. He had to literally teach himself English the hard way. While they chill in the waiting area of the massive lobby, the snow keeps dumping on the military base's buildings outside. Handing a sealed doc to the front desk, the MC clears the required paperwork for both of them to join the squad. Walking back, he tells his duo he submitted the application, and now they just had to wait for the mods to call their names. Since this hardcore server lets super young noobs enlist, the odds of their application getting greenlit were pretty much guaranteed. Clueless about what was on the form, the kid starts crying again about the lack of a translate button to make this grind easier. Trying to calm his tilted buddy, the young guy promises he already filled out all his stats on the sheet without any issues. The only game plan he gives the kid is to just spam "Hi's sir," like a boss whenever an NPC talks to him. Taking advantage of a commander raging in the background, the MC decides to explain a super weird mechanic of this zone. Looking around the lobby, he points out that they seem to be the only players using Korean voice chat in the whole crowded room. Even with this massive language bug, none of the NPCs seem to care about the foreign audio playing out loud. The young guy figures this was just a feature of the lore, where a bunch of random servers merged after the global wipe. Exploiting this glitch, he tells the kid to log any important info in Korean so the local NPCs couldn't datamine their secrets. Dropping into a more serious tone, the MC warns that enlisting meant they'd be playing solo queue for a really long time. Shocked by the sudden update, the fanboy panics, realizing he'd be totally uncarried until the bastard Sun Chi's strat worked out. Cracking a joke, the guy reminds him that his buddy seemed to have top-tier military stats based on all his whining earlier. Suggesting they treat this separation like a fun secondary campaign, he tries to lower the kid's stress meter, since he was obviously terrified. Horrified by how ice-cold he was, the kid complains that co-op is way easier, but quickly gets told that the meta required them to split up instantly. However, the idea of partying up makes the MC think about a massive issue regarding other actual players in the server. Thinking about the randoms who also snagged the secret item at the shop, he wonders how many players might be camping in the zone. Pre-firing the idea of toxic PvP with foreigners later, the guy decides they need a safe word protocol for when they bump into these randoms. Moving along, he just barks at his duo to memorize the rules and avoid being a dead weight during the tutorial phase. Turning his back to his terrified buddy, the young guy doubles down that from this second on, they were doing a strict solo run. Watching his only carry walk away, the fanboy rages, demanding one last piece of crucial intel before the party officially disbands. Super salty about the secrecy, he demands to know what weird English gamertag the MC actually put on his application. Without slowing down his walk to the objective, the guy shouts back that he'd find out his username when the NPC read it out loud. Meanwhile, a drill sergeant checking the roster stares at the paper, thinking the username picked for the kid is absolute troll material. When he yells out the ridiculous tag in the middle of the training yard, the kid takes the L for the joke, getting smacked on the head for the troll name. Watching the sun set on the frozen map, the MC feels a little bit of hype knowing the early game registration was a total success. With Phase 1 locked in, he dips from the military crowd to track down the next massive waypoint out in the snow. Reaching an isolated corner stacked with old wooden crates, he figures it was the absolute perfect spot to find a forgotten loot drop. Standing in front of the basic gravestone in the dirt, he pays respects to the tragic ending of the NPC girl who was holding the key item for his cheese strat. Recalling the official lore drop from the game, he knows the current boss of this zone originally spawned in a completely different map. During his brutal escort mission over here, the dude almost got wiped in PvP, but got clutched up at the very last second. The support player who saved the future warlord's run was exactly the girl buried right here in the snow, named Luna. Their romance leveled up super fast, leading to a pregnancy with massive hype around what the kid's name would be. But the old clan leader offered to hand over his entire server if the outsider agreed to ditch his party and marry his daughter instead. Blinded by absolute greed for loot and status, the guy swore he'd circle back for his ex and the kid as soon as he claimed admin rights to the zone. Judging how toxic that move was, the MC is 100% sure the warlord never actually planned to keep that promise. The proof was that, shortly after being brutally dumped in the snow, the poor woman just despawned from the village without a trace. His deep lore breakdown is abruptly cut off by the heavy crunch of footsteps breaking the spooky vibe of the scuffed graveyard. Moving fast to avoid pulling aggro, he ducks behind cover while the patrol guards walk away looking for random encounters. Leaning on the rough wall, the guy takes a breath, knowing that getting caught snooping here would totally lock his strategy. The constant NPC patrols made sense, since the boss himself was always spamming orders to search the map for his abandoned family. For years, squads grinded through the streets and alleys trying to find a single drop of intel on what happened to the ex and the kid. The boy's eyes show a mix of pity and harsh reality as he takes in the brutal truth of this forgotten spawn point. The boss's endless grind was totally useless from day one, because he had zero clue his ex was already permanently eliminated. Mentally pressing F to pay respects for disturbing her sleep, the guy approaches the grave knowing this was his only route to the dub. After all, the key quest item to fake his DNA test and claim the admin spot was buried deep down in that dirt. The second his hands touch the frozen layer of the grave, he notices something totally glitched out and jumps back, shocked by how it felt. Grabbing a handful of the loose dirt, the kid realizes the hitboxes were way too soft for a hole that hadn't been touched in years. With his brain overclocking, he drops to his knees in the snow, seriously wondering if another player had already raided this spot before him. Recalling the base game, the MC thinks about the nasty debuff virus that wiped the low-tier zones where the girl used to live. During that dark patch, all the non-infected players logged out of the zone as fast as they could to dodge the crazy toxic damage. But since she rolled a combat medic build in the day, she chose to stay behind and heal the noobs who had nowhere else to go. It didn't take long for her to catch the debuff too, and the survivors who pulled through built this grave as a massive flex of respect. The dead silence of the freezing night and the falling snow max out the gloomy graphics of the forgotten cemetery. Staring at the setup, the guy admits the girl was actually top tier in morality, but complains that she picked the one toxic zone to hide from her ex. Digging into the soft dirt, he notices the virus debuff at least kept the trolls away, messing up the warlord's tracking quests. Then, the kid's eyes go wide as he realizes the wooden chest was already completely unlocked, confirming his absolute worst nightmare. Staring at the skeleton inside the hole, he quickly realizes the warlord's super rare item had been looted. Right then, it hits him that the original walkthrough specifically required looting that exact item to turn it into the base leader. Only by flashing those legendary dog tags could you trigger the cutscene to be validated as the true VIP successor. Looking at the bones, the young guy admits he kind of expected a troll move like this the second he felt the loose dirt, but it was still totally tilting. He realizes his ping was too high and some sneaky player had already been there to steal his main strat. Despite the massive soft lock, the MC decides this just bumped the difficulty up to hardcore mode, which was way more fun. Showing zero tilt, he announces there's no need to rage quit, since he knew exactly where the Evriel legacy item was hiding. He explains he purposefully kept this Easter egg out of his public guides, confirming the warlord's true legendary drop wasn't the dog tags. The guy leans in close to the skeleton to unlock the true hidden achievement in that creepy spot. Using a little force, he pries open the skeleton's clenched fist to grab the loot she had been guarding so intensely. The exposed item was a moonstone ring, crafted from a shard of the exact same meter that caused the global server wipe. Equipping the ring, he notes that normally the dog tags were GG, but the other players trolling forced him to pull out Plan B. Inspecting the loot, the kid figures the girl tried to grief the rare jewelry even from grave robbers. Quietly, he drops a genuine, "My bad," for interrupting her permadeath sleep and for being one step away from hijacking the role of her abandoned kid. To balance his karma for this massive scam, the young guy swears he'll actually try to play the good son role if he unlocks the hair title. Staring intensely at the glowing ring, the young guy makes the ultimate promise that he'd sweat his hardest to not get a game over on this crazy run. Suddenly, the magical item flashes a blinding light while a UI pop-up announces he had approached the mysteries of the apocalypse. Shook by the flashbang, the MC panics, terrified the insane light particles would pull aggro from the local guards. Right then, a notification grants him limited admin access and asks if he wants to redeem an exclusive perk for players who got the platinum trophy. Checking the patch notes, he wonders what the meta is for this reward and notices a chat feature, planning to DM other players. Deciding not to waste any frames, the boy chooses to activate the hidden perk before checking the other new tabs on his UI. The menu displays his OG gamertag and an endless list of unlocked titles, proving he had 100%ed all the legacy achievements. Reading the tooltips, he realizes the old titles gave crazy buffs, like instantly maxing out reputation with NPCs connected to the dead girl. Since he had to face the boss first thing in the morning, the guy decides to equip the Friend of the Fallen title to guarantee he wouldn't catch a ban. Thinking about the buff, the young guy figures any scrubs who didn't 100% the game would have to start their grind with absolutely zero stats. Equipping the jewelry, he wonders who the devs were that dumped them in this server, until he notices something super glitched blinking on his HUD. The bright warning confirms that the passive buff from the title he just equipped had already triggered on a nearby NPC. The MC is completely mind-blown, unable to process how the mechanic activated if his minimap showed 0 players nearby. Looking around the empty graveyard, he remembers the alert was only coded to pop if an NPC who knew the dead girl was in aggro range. Out of nowhere, a skeletal hand clips through the dirt and grabs the kid's ankle with insane grip strength straight from the grave. Without dropping a sweat, the guy just shovels the dirt back into the hole, deciding to ignore the creepy glitch since the skeleton stopped moving. Walking the streets, the boy shifts his focus, wondering if the troll who looted the dog tags had already pushed to the military base. Using maximum sarcasm, he complains about having to ruin the run of such a dedicated fan who was just strictly following his god-tier guides. Hitting the massive doors of the official base, the guards instantly block his path, demanding to know what his random spawn was about. Flexing his confidence, the young guy talks back smoothly, saying he had premium intel on the family the boss had been grinding to find. Hearing that, the guard looks shook and mentions that the young master was actually right about someone pulling up, putting the MC on high alert. Without dropping any spoilers, the guard just tells the kid to follow him inside, saying this supposed master was already hyping up his arrival. Trailing the NPC down the fancy hallway, the MC realizes the plot just took a wildly unscripted turn. Climbing the epic staircase, he tries to figure out who this young master was, and why he was using radar to track down other players. Stepping into the premium VIP room, the kid is greeted politely by a smooth voice echoing from the center. Facing 2 random kids in the room, he instantly gets hit with a direct question confirming he was also an Ezekide player. Through the UI, the MC checks out the sidekick's weird profile while the guy asks him to lower his aggro in the room. The other dude drops a friendly tip that speaking Korean acted like a private Discord channel, since the server didn't have an official localization patch. Showing 0 reaction to the noob tip, the guy ruins the chill vibe by stating he already had full map awareness of that fact. Judging the guy's overly nice act, the young guy figures they aren't hostile mobs, but demands to know why they were camping for other survivors. The dark-haired kid finds the rush amusing and suggests they pause the heavy lore questions until after they finish the intro cutscene. Hearing that, the MC hesitates on the word intro, guessing this roleplay was going to be way more complex than it looked. He spots right away that these 2 scrubs hadn't even unlocked the starter UI yet and couldn't datamine their own true stats. Flexing this admin advantage, the kid decides to keep up his disguise and confidently claims his internet handle was a burner account. Seeing the bluff, the preppy kid steps up, getting ready to flex his own internet clout. Striking a super arrogant pose, the kid thumps his chest and proudly declares that he is the legendary player Dopamine Junkie. The real MC is absolutely stunned by the sheer cap, staring at the faker, literally unable to process the BS he just heard. Taking the kid's silence as pure shock, the imposter strokes his ego, bragging that his OP reputation preceded him in this server. The faker keeps hyping himself up while the actual author of the guides just watches him, trying to comprehend this level of cringe. Writing on his stolen achievements, the scammer tries to intimidate the kid, asking if he was trying to steal his legendary gamertag. Dying from second-hand embarrassment, the MC internally panics, wondering if he actually sounded that toxic online back in the day. Judging the kid's basic starter skin, the fake idol assumes he's just a clueless noob and rudely tells him to log off. Flashing the stolen dog tags, the kid flexes that this hidden quest wouldn't even trigger without the legendary item in his inventory. Suddenly, the fake hears the kid sarcastically applaud his absolutely reckless confidence for standing there. Flipping the script, the rich kid figures the noob might actually be useful for farming and offers him a support role in his epic guild. The sidekick next to him hits a respectful bow, proving he had already accepted his fate as the loyal pet to this fake shot caller. Looking down, the MC finally pieces together the whole meta and the real reason for this random lobby meetup. He realizes the low-level players who couldn't handle the hardcore difficulty were getting wiped before they even started the tutorial quest. But the sweaty tryhards would instantly group up here to steal the hair slot, turning the mansion into a massive PvP arena. Turning his back, the imposter reveals his master plan to become the server admin, demanding only top-tier players in his squad to pull it off. The fake junkie demands a fast click, but the MC shoots down the invite ice cold, saying he'd never join a party with a clown like him. With a totally demonic look, the young guy orders them to summon the military boss, furious at watching his god-tier strat being butchered this badly. Staring out the premium window, the MC vows to expose the fake and run a flawless tutorial on how to actually clear a route. Hearing footsteps, the guy turns around super chill, facing the exit of the room. Internally, he thinks it's GG that the sidekick stepped out to pull the boss into the room. Just then, the redhead grabs his attention, showing he actually wanted to open a dialogue. The boy guesses the fanboy also wanted to attempt the Lost Here speedrun, but ended up just tagging along with the scammer because it was the easy meta. But the redhead shoots down that theory, saying he spawned in the exact same lobby as the fake strategist when the server booted up. Finding this RNG kinda cool, the MC notes that the guy handles dialogue trees way better than he initially gave him credit for. So he asks why the guy kept supporting the fake admin instead of just enlisting in the army to grind XP. With the vibe getting heavy, the fanboy admits he had zero interest in doing another military campaign after already serving IRL. Checking out the redhead's tanky build, the young guy totally gets why the scammer wanted to keep such an obedient, high HP pet around. He asks if the kid had any toxic assault against the guide creator for causing this whole glitch, and gets a sad nod confirming it. But right after, the redhead pivots his dialogue and claims that, deep down, he was actually super thankful for this crazy drop. Clenching his fists, he admits that getting to co-op in this survival simulator alongside his idol made his heart rate spike. Totally fangirling, the fanboy yells about how much he worshipped the pro gamer, making the MC sigh as he realizes this dude is also completely unhinged. The sidekick keeps defending his logic, saying that pocketing the only guy capable of beating the game was the ultimate meta, leaving the young guy mind blown. Understanding the lore, the MC agrees that following the imposter's shot calling would normally be the smartest move to dodge the apocalypse. Shocked by this blind NPC-level loyalty, the guy decides to run one last speech check before making a move. Scanning the redhead top to bottom, he asks if the guy was truly a hardcore ride or die stan of the famous player. With eyes practically sparkling with pride, the sidekick confirms his absolute loyalty without missing a frame. Seeing that, the MC smoothly announces the kid just passed the vibe check, leaving the fanboy totally confused. Before the redhead can even type a question, the heavy boom of the giant doors flying open shakes the whole room. The massively over-leveled boss of the barracks finally steps into the arena, flanked by his trusted admin. The second the commander locks eyes with the MC, the system pings that the dead girl's friendship buff was successfully applied. The passive stat boost is doubled thanks to the hidden ring, leaving the young guy absolutely shook by the extra RNG luck. Completely locked onto the kid, the military boss power walks straight toward him. Leaning in close to the boy's hitbox, the tanky man nostalgically notes that his character model looked exactly like his lost love. Catching the system prompt, the guy realizes the title wasn't just for charisma points, but actually applied a reskin to how the NPCs saw his face. In the back of the room, the imposter starts sweating bullets, sensing this wholesome cutscene was completely wrecking his script. Desperate to pull aggro back to himself, the fake kid yells to show off his quest item, while the MC just asks the boss to check his hand. Gently opening his palm, the guy flexes the glowing rock and confidently states that this was the legacy item his mom left him. Completely silenced, the warlord stares at the tiny piece of jewelry with a mix of mind-blown shock and heavy sadness. Malfunctioning at the scene, the imposter demands to know what that scuffed ring even meant to the lore. Cutting off the noise, the boss turns his head and aggressively checks the liar about his claim to be the true admin hair. Radiating pure boss-level intimidation, the commander warns that his true love's actual legendary item was in someone else's inventory. Going into full panic mode, the fake kid accuses his rival of griefing and stealing hard, stuck on the idea that the dog tags were the only valid key item. With absolutely zero chill, the commander orders the kid to mute his mic, stunning the imposter with fear instantly. Fixing his coat, the cruel man drops a warning that he'd zero out any noob who dared to drop fake lore right to his face. The redhead watches the whole thing totally paralyzed, whispering that the online wikis guaranteed a win solely with the stolen tags. Sweating buckets, the scammer grinds his teeth, realizing his HP bar was hanging by a single pixel. Desperate to find a bug to exploit for this fail, he turns to the MC, demanding to know his actual gamertag. Losing his mind over the throw, the kid screams, trying to dox the noob's real identity. In that exact frame, the system throws a mission failed screen for the fake's wrote, making the kid realize with sheer horror who he was actually beefing with. Pure dread takes over as another pop-up announces that disqualified players would get permanently banned from the server with zero mercy. Following the boss's commands, the guard restrains the scammer by the arm, while the MC watches the ban hammer drop with absolute zero emotion. Right then, a notification confirms that ownership of the stolen loot was transferred back to him, catching the real mastermind off guard. The commander orders the intruder dragged to the interrogation room, making the guy remember a hardcore rule of the game. The loot return mechanic only triggered inside safe zones when a player fully eliminated another player from the server. Processing the brutal penalty, the young guy realizes with some anxiety that failing a quest out here literally meant a real-life game over. He figures getting wiped here might just eject the player back to the real world. But he had zero solid proof of that yet. Bawling his eyes out, the fanboy begs for the fake idol getting dragged away, while the MC just tells him to chill out. Cutting to the chase, the young guy flatly states that the useless faker was never the OP player the redhead was simping for. Confused, the partner tries to process the patch notes, remembering all the cringe tasks he did blindly following the liar. Flashing a totally chill look, the MC finally turns off incognito mode, asking how his #1 fanboy failed to spot his main account earlier. The redhead is completely stunned by the random reveal, and the young guy explains it was impossible to datamine without the UI active. To prove he wasn't trolling, he unlocks his official profile visibility so the kid can inspect his crazy stats. Staring at the legendary titles floating on the HUD, the boy's eyes bug out, completely incapable of typing a single coherent sentence. Sounding super confident, the young guy flexes that he'd never throw a run that fast using a meta strat he literally coded from scratch. Feeling the weight of his massive skill issue, the fanboy dramatically bows, begging for forgiveness for doubting his absolute idol. Internally, the poor guy is dying of cringe remembering how he even questioned the imposter's weak stats, but still got scammed anyway. Clinging to his idol's legs while crying, the redhead yells that he low-key knew all along, but gets instantly shushed to avoid pulling aggro. Playing it safe, the young guy warns that not every survivor in this lobby would be friendly if they leaked his OP gamertag. To keep his stealth build intact, he orders the redhead to only use the abandoned son's NPC name, getting frantic nods in return. As a buff, the strategist promises to carry the kid through the survival phase if he acts as support, making the ally hit a hyped-up salute. Pleased with the high loyalty stat, the MC figures farming this fanboy would be way less grinding than enlisting in the actual military faction. Walking toward the safe house, he thinks about needing party members since his 10-year-old hitbox severely nerfed his mobility. Gripping the secret gem tight, he mentally preps his loadout for the next high-risk stages of this massive raid. Suddenly, a glowing system prompt pops up, announcing a brand new quest line tied to the server's doomsday lore. The young guy clearly remembers that every safe zone had a single legendary drop forged from the meteorites that crashed down. It hits him that unlocking this god-tier item was step 1 to beating the main quest of the global wipe. Seeing this, the boy figures the system only unlocked his admin privileges because he made physical contact with the space rock. Theory crafting his next move, he guesses that farming the rest of the legendary shards would fast-track him to beating the main storyline. Before, he thought the only objective was to survive the next server wipe, but now he realized a deep dive investigation was mandatory. With a hyper-focused glare, the guy admits that dealing with this unscripted chaos was way harder than a standard playthrough. Switching topics, he commands his partner to lie to the boss, claiming he got completely mind-controlled by the imposter's scam. The MC warns that the boss's suspicion meter would be maxed out at first, but promises to introduce him to a support player soon. Keeping the dialogue going, the redhead mentions the fake used the gamertag, scumbag, online and was actually carrying him. The MC advises his support to only stick to that backstory if he actually bumped into the guy in the lobby again. A bit nervous, the fanboy tries to ping his idol about a major lore detail in this whole setup. He theorizes that the arrogant kid also got randomly SK'd into this server while chilling at the convenience store. Clueless about why the kid is so sure, the strategist instantly asks where he dated such a perfectly accurate guess. The reasoning was that the whole community got hyped after the store's address was leaked, and everyone rushed there, including the redhead himself. It was during that event that he bumped into the fake, shared some strats, and found out about the toxic gamertag he rocked online. Right then, the dude was buying a knife specifically because he read the survival guide posted by the MC. After all, the guide gave a step-by-step breakdown on how to cheese that secret and ridiculously hardcore zone. The sidekick explains he watched the guy grab the melee weapon and head straight to the checkout counter of the shop. Reviewing the VOD in his head, the guy confirms the imposter's spawn point was definitely the terrifying knife zone. Feeling a tiny bit of guilt, he regrets sending the dude straight to the hardest server available by leaking the address online. Pivoting the chat, the redhead asks if his idol also got teleported after seeing the cashier totally rage on the imposter. He casually mentions that the NPC clerk smacked the guy in the head with the barcode scanner, and that he himself got warped while exiting the shop. Surprised, the MC is relieved to note he didn't take any physical damage before spawning in the snow biome. Curious about this cutscene, the young guy wonders why the clerk went full aggro on the customer out of nowhere. Deciding to skip that side quest for now, he reminds his duo to keep up the "I got scammed" roleplay if the guards started an interrogation. Right on cue, the heavy sound of the massive wooden door swinging open interrupts the boys' voice chat. A guard steps into the room, announcing the military lord was summoning the dark-haired kid to the dining hall. The strategist hits a quick nod and readies up for the massive boss encounter with the leader of the giant barracks. Hitting the fancy dining room, he finds the intimidating boss sitting solo at the far end of the massive table. Mentally, the kid notes that his magical charisma buff was ridiculously OP, considering the boss waited for him with zero aggro. The warlord casually drops that he ordered the redhead fanboy to go AFK and rest, since his HP looked pretty low. Flashing a sad look, the man vents about wasting years grinding the slum areas looking for his old love without a single drop of success. Completely desperate for a walkthrough, he asks where the girl had been camping this whole time. Holding his RP stance, the MC explains she was located in the graveyard right behind the server's lowest tier district. The military man processes the lore instantly, gripping his goblet tight as the tragic permadeath of his old flame hits him. Overwhelmed with the debuff of breaking his promise, the lord decides he needs to patch up his brutal abandonment somehow. Without hesitating, he declares he's making the kid his sole admin heir, transferring control of the whole server to him. In that exact frame, a glowing system UI pops up, confirming the strategy was a flawless victory and offering a choice of 3 exclusive loot drops. The young guy knows full well that securing the bastard heir title was just phase 1 of a massively sweaty master plan. To actually hijack absolute admin control of the zone, he had to execute the 3 reward strat perfectly. Locking in on the objective, the boss asks the kid to just drop his ultimate wish list right then and there. Playing the role of a clingy son perfectly, the kid simply requests that the man visit his mom's spawn point on a regular basis. In reality, this dialogue option was heavily optimized to farm hair reputation points every time the boss hit the graveyard. The warlord accepts the quest with zero hesitation, swearing he'd complete the daily task now that he knew her exact coordinates. With the first request checked off, the system refreshes, pinging that he still had 2 more magical perks left to claim. Trying to make the lobby vibe a bit more chill, the army commander pauses the heavy lore dump. He suggests it would be way better to heal up with the massive feast before diving back into the toxic topics. The table is loaded with high-tier consumables, flexing the insane amount of premium currency the zone leader was hoarding. The kid is amazed to see actual high-res food textures, spotting real potatoes and beef instead of the gross mob drops. Acting super humble, the man apologizes for the basic meal they cooked and tells the kid to max out his stamina bar. Realizing the boss fight was over, the the strategist quietly praises his RNG for not making a single fatal misclick so far. Feeling way more chill, he grabs a piece of bread, thinking he finally earned a brief AFK moment in the middle of all this chaos. But the second he touches the consumable, he gets jump, scared by a totally broken glitch happening right in front of him. Absolutely shook, the MC watches the food literally delete itself from his hand before he could even take a bite. Shaking a little, he tries to mask the massive system error going on in his brain. At that moment, the boss spots something weird on the kid's hand and immediately flags it. The young guy goes into full panic mode, terrified his miracle disguise was getting exposed mid-dinner. To his massive relief, the Lord just points out in amazement that the debuff on the kid's skin was completely wiped clean. Staring at his own hand, the strategist sees that the cut was actually fully deleted without even leaving a scratch. He peeps his restored skin, hyper, focusing on figuring out the broken physics of this virtual server. Checking the instant HP regen, the guy links it directly to the bread that despawned a second ago. The kid figures the consumable was instantly converted into raw stats by his character model to patch up his damaged health bar. Reviewing his sweaty run through the freezing city over the last few hours, he realizes the HUD was bugged from the start. Even after sprinting through the snow biome and tanking high-stress events, his hunger meter hadn't dropped once since he spawned. The vanilla game engine ran exactly like this, deleting the hunger mechanic and turning any food item into an instant health potion. It becomes perfectly clear that these digital cheat codes were fully integrated into his new IRL hitboxes. Thanks to this insanely OP buff, he realizes he wouldn't have to waste time grinding daily food quests, and could just hoard snacks as medkits. Since this passive wasn't on his exclusive reward list, he guesses all the other players in the lobby had this standard buff too. Deciding to test the cooldowns on this auto heal later, the guy snaps his camera back to the NPC sitting across from him. His brain overclocks to generate a believable cover story for why his wound just magically despawned. But the troop leader cuts him off, saying the kid didn't need to drop any lore to explain the glitch. Looking super relaxed, the boss mentions his ex also rocked those exact same OP healing passives. The man drops some backstory, saying over the years, a bunch of random kids spawned at the base swearing they were his lost heir. He flexes that he easily permanently banned all the fakers because he was the only one who knew his true love's hidden stats. Feeling a massive wave of relief at the chill vibe, the guy silently thanks the boss for boosting his trust meter so easily. Sending back some fatherly vibes, the Lord thanks the kid for clearing the brutal obstacle course to reach the safe zone. Keeping his poker face on lock, the MC is internally freaking out, finding this whole lore dump about magical passives incredibly sus. As the guy who literally wrote the meta guides, he knew for an absolute fact that 0 native NPCs in the game had healing powers. This massive violation of the server rules makes the strategist highly suspicious that the dead girl might have been an IRL player. Just like him. Even though he's hyped his disguise didn't break, he realizes he just planted into a massive, high-risk puzzle. The lore behind the glowing ring and the girl's actual role in the global wipe suddenly look a lot darker. He knows that data mining, whether she had admin commands or was guarding the apocalypse secrets, was critical for his own survival run. With a million question marks pinging in his head, the young guy wants to spam the boss with backstory questions, but decides it's smarter to camp for now. Weighing his dialogue options, the MC knows he needs to lock in his admin role first, since asking too many questions might trigger unnecessary aggro. The kid ends the silence at the dinner table, pulling the boss's attention from across the room. Playing it cool, he announces he has an important side quest to request, getting an instant green light from the man to keep talking. Skipping the filler, the boy asks to unlock a monthly co-op dinner event with the other NPCs in his level range. In that frame, the system logs the successful speech check, confirming the second exclusive reward was claimed. The military boss is visibly thrown off by the weird request and asks why he wanted to party up for meals with the random kids. Faking max empathy, the boy explains there are tons of low-level orphans taking damage in the streets from the hunger and cold debuffs. He justifies his request by saying he had insane RNG to get a hot meal and wanted to carry the noobs just a little bit. But inside his head, the strategist knows was just a low-tier cover story to hide his actual master plan. Since only real players auto-consumed food instantly, watching them eat was the absolute best meta to scan for people from his server. Plus, If he ended up spotting the randoms from the convenience store, keeping them in his party would be way easier. By maxing out his rep with the native kid NPCs, he'd also secure a loyal guild for the late game, making the strat an absolute sweep. The whole play relied 100% on the military boss clicking accept, and the guy was currently showing a heavy thinking animation. The kid understands the lag, knowing the request might look like a political PR stunt, but it wasn't an impossible ask. Noticing the delayed response, the young guy decides to pop his ultimate drama skill, looking down and claiming he'd be hyped just drinking tap water if it cost too much gold. To make it worse, the boy adds he used to eat snow off the streets to avoid the starvation debuff since it was free to play, totally horrifying the Lord. Gently placing his cup on the table, he begs the man to review the trade offer with a kind heart. Flashing a 100% innocent aesthetic, the boy stutters, looking up and calling the boss, Dad, for the very first time. The emotional crit from that single word hits the military commander directly in the feels, instantly destroying any defense stats he had up. Unable to hit decline, the guy accepts instantly, swearing to host the banquet next month while the system confirms the final reward drop. Later that night, the MC is already logged off in a premium dorm room while the commander tells him to recharge his stamina. Snug under the blankets, the guy drops a good night in the chat for the boss. But the military man pauses near the door, clearly lagging before exiting the room. Staring at the moon through the window, the man breaks the silence, stating the boy probably had a ton of questions about the family lore, especially about why he partied up with someone else, or why he failed to tank for his ex like he promised. With a heavy voice, the Lord admits he wants to drop the whole lore explanation, but feels the kid's level is too low to process the deep backstory. Patting the kid's head, he swears to unlock all the dialogue trees as soon as the right patch drops. The strategist just nods like an obedient NPC, keeping his stealth mode absolutely flawless. Happy with the reaction, the man announces the cutscene is over for now and turns his back to leave. But before crossing the threshold, he softly adds that the boy could officially call him Dad from this checkpoint forward. Solo in the dark dorm, the MC gets super hyped, realizing his cheese strat of spamming the dad dialogue worked like a charm. He knows it would take a massive grind before the boss actually viewed him as a legit here, but he plans to exploit the mechanic whenever possible. After all, managing this scuffed shelter in the endgame was going to require a ton of political power and maxed out inventory. Suddenly, a glowing monitor pops up, pinging that more than 2 users unlocked the system, bringing the world chat server online. The kid jumps out of bed, totally mind blown that someone else in the server also unlocked the admin panels. Reading the server invite, he starts to suspect that looting the meteor shards was the universal season pass for this feature. Pushed by curiosity, the young guy clicks the UI to enter the forum and scout who the other high-tier survivor was. Right after, the panel announces the user Dopamine Junkie has connected to the voice chat. A second later, another cursed, super recognizable gamertag logs into the system, leaving the strategist absolutely shook. A cold sweat drops down his spine as he confirms the other user was exactly the toxic troll he blocked online. Speed processing the data, he remembers the dangerous dude spawned straight into the nightmare level knife zone. That specific map was notorious for being a literal containment zone for toxic players, where absolute griefing was the only rule. To farm the magic jewel in that hellhole, the player literally had to run a genocide route and wipe out every single NPC in the area. Even though it sounded like an impossible raid for a level 1 noob, there was an exploit using the zone's specific meteor dagger. But wielding a weapon that one shot at any hitbox didn't make the run a breeze, since even the guide creator himself sweated hard clearing it. Realizing the guy tanked that insane difficulty spike and still booted up the system proved he was definitely not a casual. On the floating UI, the enemy sends a DM asking if he was actually the owner of the legendary gamertag. Sitting on his bed, the boy hesitates on his dialogue choice, wanting to datamine the enemy's current build and progression. Choosing to play it cool, he shoots back a casual text confirming his identity in the global chat. But the dude's reply comes back in all caps, swearing he was going to track him down and send him to the lobby with zero mercy. First thing the next morning, the sun lights up the snow stacked on the roofs of the military base. A guard opens the door, summoning the young master and pinging that the barracks director wanted a meeting. The kid turns his head, surprised by the random forced event so early in the cycle. Keeping his VIP posture intact, He just asks for the waypoint to find this commander. Right then, his brain flashes back to last night, remembering the massive headache he got trying to de-escalate the toxic guy in chat. He clarified he wasn't the dev who caused the glitch and leaked premium tips on how food acted as health pots in the engine. But even with free top-tier support, the guy kept his aggro locked, swearing to wipe the strategist as soon as his survival was secured. The MC knows that pushing through the knife zone required an insane buff to motivation, so he agreed to act as the boss target for that rage. To keep the enemy from rage quitting IRL, he leaked his coordinates in the cola zone and taunted him to stay alive if he wanted his PvP match. Walking through the courtyard behind the guard, the kid complains that the salty opponent hadn't typed a single word since then. Reaching the archery range, the boy figures the enemy must be drowning in mob aggro, when a voice hits him with a polite greeting. A fancy dude with glasses and gray hair drops a sarcastic line about the massive wave of kids trying to spoof the hair title lately. The boy instantly clocks the base director's toxic superiority complex, staring the man down from a distance. Since the commander was insanely sweaty and calculated, the young guy always opted to poison him in past playthroughs to optimize his speedrun. With zero respect, the guy warns that the boy needed to boost his manners stat, even if he was the boss's actual blood drop. Hitting him with emotional damage, he points out that the Lord's only official co-op partner was Lady Daphne, nerfing the MC's status to a basic illegitimate spawn. The kid notes the annoying AI behavior is exactly a 1-3-1 port from the game, but decides he isn't going to grief him this time. In his head, the strategist remembers the director was also an orphan trained in the military faction, balancing a massive stress debuff with god-tier stats. Despite his icy skin, this solo player secretly just wanted to unlock a wholesome family dynamic where love flowed naturally. That deeply buried questline to build a happy home across generations was the commander's biggest weak point. Back in the day, during his scuffed early game, a soft hand reached out to him and totally rewrote his code. The owner of that hand was exactly Daphne, the gorgeous hair of the ex-commander, who kindly handed him a cloth. The young soldier's eyes bugged out in shock at the high-level girl's mercy. Back then, the commander played himself, thinking his heart rate only spiked because she was a premium-tier NPC. Because of that, he suppressed his actual romance meter, bitterly accepting that his dream of building a cozy base with her was an impossible side quest. To hide that he felt under-leveled for the bosses here, the barracks director decided to just focus on grinding his daily missions. Locking his true feelings behind a firewall, the commander sweated endlessly to buff the defenses of the girls' spawn zone. But the peace of their silent co-op run crashed the second the grand boss randomly dropped into their lobby. After that surprise encounter, the stranger known as Hayden ended up marrying young Daphne and claiming the top admin spot of the barracks. Re-signed as the new boss's support main, the director quickly datamined the harsh truth behind that sudden alliance. The hyped-up marriage was forged strictly for meta strategy, with absolutely zero romance stats involved. Seeing the debuff on his wife's face, the commander took massive emotional damage watching the girl he simped for trapped in a useless party. Pushing back against the boss, he states he wouldn't grief if the girl was actually happy, but calls out that the husband didn't even love her. Without dropping his boss aura, the soldier demands the fake alliance be disbanded immediately. The base leader calmly thanks him for the weird feedback, but notes the random aggro was kinda sus. Focusing on his support's top-tier stats, the boss asks why he was demanding a divorce before even applying for the leader role. The commander is completely muted when he hears the boss confirm there was zero romance between him and the girl. With a chill look, the admin explains he was just camping until he could reconnect with his actual original party. As soon as he transfers admin rights, the boss promises the old commander's daughter would be completely unbanned from her duties. Glitching out at the crazy lore drop, the support stutters, while the leader uses the lag to drop one direct question. Shading his face with a heavy graphic filter, the lord completely flips the vibe of the dialogue, maxing out the room's tension meter. The MC is horrified to hear his adopted dad bluntly ask if the director had romantic stats for the young girl. Caught totally off guard, the commander's poise shatters, shocked to hear the exact same speech check from before. Reviewing the social dynamics closely, the kid realizes his bastard son buff gave him massive insight into reading the boss. With a heavy heart, the boy internally admits he also spent his whole playthrough dreaming of an actual family run. Because of this, The strategist decides to pivot his playstyle, loudly declaring that he totally understood his dad's mechanics perfectly. Pausing for a frame, the young guy wonders if he overacted the dialogue sequence in front of the officers. The director lowers his head, apologizing for his toxic manners, while the MC smugly decides his speech check was a critical hit. Right then, a blue system UI pops out of nowhere in front of the kid, completely stealing his focus. The panel spams notifications about multiple random gamer tags joining a public lobby, leaving the kid totally mind blown. He already predicted the other players would start unlocking the premium features soon, but finds it insane that they all logged on at the exact same tick. Checking a ping from a user named Home Defender, the young guy figures the blocked internet troll had also loaded in. Highly entertained by the chaotic lobby, the strategist drops "sup" to the group, while his rival frantically spams asking for his coordinates. Panicking in the global chat, the other players start spamming if everyone else also got dragged into the game's VR engine. Validating the theory, an emotional fanboy caps locks that he was the MC's #1 sub, while another random hits an emote because he wasn't taking damage alone. Strolling through the fancy mansion halls, the young guy processes the intel that all survivors were linked by the same server wipe. The kid thinks it's wild that the whole squad actually went to investigate the glitchy convenience store, just because he dropped the pin online. Flashing a troll smile, he admits that watching this entire lobby of lost, panicking noobs was actually pretty top-tier content. Knowing the brutal patch notes of this universe, he understands the low difficulty zones would be the first to get instantly deleted when the wipe returned. To have any RNG chance of tanking the final invasion, the users would have to speedrun out of those squishy safe zones fast. The biggest skill issue was that most players just camped to survive the early game and ended up soft, locked in weak bases, leading to a dead end. Trying to scan the global threat level, the MC drops that he's currently posted in the Cola zone and demands the others leak their spawn points. Without checking for traps, one noob instantly replies he's hard, stuck in the super chill love zone. Then, another player pings he's in the beer zone, while digital icons flood the chat interface. The replies keep rolling in, with players tagging the chicken zone and even the hardcore illegal substance zone. The chat devolves into a toxic lobby when one noob flames another for buying sketch powder at the shop, only to get the excuse that it looked like regular flour. Back in his cozy dorm, the strategist notices the knife zone was the only one missing, triggering a massive panic wave in the chat. The other players spam F in the chat for the unlucky bro, fully aware of how absolutely broken and toxic that hidden map was. Judging by the syntax of a message about being in the cigarette zone, the MC confirms the blocked hater actually spawned in a super easy tutorial area. Hoping his rival doesn't get sent to the lobby too fast, the kid notes there was a super vital NPC he needed to interact with before his HP hit 0. Demanding hard proof, the user in the dentist zone asks if the chat actually bought into this crazy map zone lore. Super sus, he presses his buddy, asking why the poor guy in the secret zone wasn't even typing to confirm he existed. During the sweaty debate, the MC notices that at least this guy wasn't AFK mentally, unlike the rest of the casuals. Trying to diffuse the aggro, the fanboy asks for chill vibes and warns that the lobby admin was the legendary creator of the OG web guides. The strategist figures leaking their pre-wipe locations wouldn't cause any PvP griefing, since linking up IRL was literally impossible right now. Playing defense, the stubborn guy keeps acting like a noob and asks what the hell being in a safe zone even meant. The veterans in the chat explode in shock, totally mind blown that the guy was a literal day, one noob with 0 hours logged. Remembering the IRL map layout, the guy recalls there was a clinic right next to the convenience store where the glitch happened. Slipping into his DMs, the MC declares the guy must be in the candy zone purely because he was acting like a total scrub. The noob goes completely silent, confirming the kid guessed his exact spawn point in the most basic, joke, tier region of the server. After dropping a T for the carry, the chat mod warns he still had to drop a tutorial on a massive hidden mechanic. In his head, he already theorized the instant UI unlock was hard, coded to looting a rare item. Skipping the fluff, he drops the main question in general chat, asking if anyone in the squad looted an item crafted from a meteor. Instantly, the WES replies start spamming, ranging from rare jewelry to a military-grade revolver fully modeled out of space rocks. The stubborn noob backs down and types that he watched some sketchy boss-looking NPC touch a super weird rock. The user in the sketchy zone gets curious and asks if this UI trigger was actually hard, linked to the space rocks scattered around the map. Chilling on the edge of his bed, the MC reads the guy's reply confirming he didn't have any OP loot in his inventory. Merging the data, the guy realizes some users just needed to physically clip a piece of the rock to unlock the virtual menu. Since he figured physical contact was the main trigger, he drops another question, wanting to know if the chat had bumped into any other real players. The replies are all over the place. Some formed co-op parties, others were admins of whole guilds, and some hadn't seen a single player model yet. Processing the chaotic data dump, the kid spots a weird Easter egg connected to the chicken and love zones. Even though there were multiple players roaming those servers, only one party leader managed to unlock the message UI. Staring hard at the blue panel, he figures out that the system definitely required a secondary hidden condition on top of just touching the space rocks. After the intense data mining session, the boy stretches his avatar and admits he'd need a lot more playtime to crack all the puzzles. Before logging off, the strategist promises to run support for anyone who DMs him, but gets hit with a joke about falling asleep in class tomorrow. A few days after that massive data exchange, a super sweaty debate takes over the military base's giant conference room. The opposition NPC launches the first attack, asking if they had pinged the abandoned son of the Grand Traitor yet. The boss's ally claps back with the same aggro, calling it absolute disrespect to flame a war legend like that. Jumping up with pure rage, the rival rejects the legend. Tag for a woman who just rage quit her post and vanished. Before the verbal PvP gets physical, a loud bang shakes the table as a third commander warns anyone who dared to downplay her stats. The cutscene starts in the meeting hall, with the leader of Daphne's faction saying they all lost their minds for screaming in front of the Lord. Hearing the toxic lobby, the commander steps in calmly, stating he was also highly curious about this patch of lore. He asks point blank if the committee viewed that girl as just a troll who dodged her quests. On the flip side, he asks if they ranked her as an absolute god, tier legend of the military base. Making a sharp pivot, the boss demands his hair solve this hardcore lore puzzle. The massive door opens right on cue, with the leader asking for admin perms to show the kid to the generals. As the kid loads in, system prompts confirm his passive friendship aura immediately applied a buff to everyone in the room. Holding his boss stance, the strategist drops his name and his title as the commander's heir. Internally, he admits he expected some toxic emotes, but didn't think the aggro level would be this high. Walking on the carpet, he finds it insane his adopted dad just dropped him straight into this boss room. Scanning the NPCs, the guy realizes this was the main admin room, packed with all the highest level whales of the server. Checking the factions, he spots that half were simping for the current wife, while the rest were veterans who partied up with the Lord's ex. Theory: crafting the trap. The young guy figures treating the woman like a rage quitter would instantly tank his rep with the veterans. But on the other hand, hyping her up as a MVP would completely delete any chance of getting carried by the opposition. Without catching a debuff, he looks up and states that the real issue here wasn't his mom's OP or toxic track record. The kid declares the only stat that mattered right now was that the Lord was his actual biological father. Tilted by the disrespect, the opposition leader smashes the table, yelling that admin disputes should be settled with raw PvP. He flames the kid, asking how a noob with a scuffed origin story had the balls to spam such garbage in this lobby. Demanding the guards permaban the intruder instantly, the guy gets jump, scared by a sudden gunshot that completely mutes the entire room. The glasses-wearing officer lowers his smoking gun and asks if the young master took any splash damage from the chaos. Defending his hardcore griefing, the director claims he had to pop his ult because he was terrified the kid would take a hit. The strategist turns his head, still buffering the absolute chaos that just went down right in front of him. Showing zero panic animation, he just complains that the premium skin the Lord gifted him got stained. The shooter closely inspects the kid's ice-cold reaction. After that brutal server event, the massive executive meeting was completely cancelled. Watching from a distance, the barracks leader reviews his new hero's unbreakable poise. He finds it absolutely surreal that a player literally just got deleted in the room, and the kid's emotion gauge didn't even flinch. Walking down the halls, the commander tells the director he already knew the kid had high INT, but didn't expect him to be this edgy. Looking for a second opinion, the Lord asks what the commander thought of the kid during the tutorial phase. The gray-haired guy admits he already thought the kid had a weird build, but he ended up completely breaking the stat cap. The professor explains the kid downloaded all the etiquette rules for premium events without a single lag spike. Plus, he instantly mapped out the army's clan hierarchy and heavily fixated on the commander's wife's lore. Blown away, the officer points out the kid's RAM and focus were completely broken for a player his size. But the most terrifying exploit of all was his aimbot level accuracy at the shooting range. The director admits he spectated the skills with his own eyes, but still felt like it had to be a glitch. During the tutorial, the kid's stance and recoil control with the weapon were a 1-3-1 match with a max-level veteran. Looking away like an innocent noob, the kid asked if his crosshair placement was right, swearing it was his first time touching the mechanics. The system logs that he just spammed the passive aimbot title, internally noting that it actually was his first time shooting with this specific avatar model. Jumping back to the debrief, the instructor notes that any casual with a basic tutorial could hit a standard hitbox. However, the insane mechanics displayed proved the kid had a terrifying, hard-coded talent for PvP. The officer reminds the commander that landing critical hits was a mandatory requirement for defending the safe zone. This mechanic existed because the raid bosses wouldn't drop until their weak points got obliterated with pixel-perfect accuracy. Keeping that meta in mind, the director concludes the kid would be a top-tier carry for the upcoming crowd control raids. Lost in his own dialogue tree, he realizes he was literally suggesting they drop the commander's hair straight into the front lines. The leader listens to the whole voice memo super carefully and just hits a mysterious nod, accepting the subordinate's data mean. The commander goes back to staring down the hallway, brooding over the cursed endgame waiting for his server. Back in his room, the kid sits buffering, crafting the next phases of his massive speedrun. Outside, the snow keeps spamming the frozen rooftops of the massive military compound. Down in the courtyard, the NPCs start dropping rumors about the unscripted permadeath that went down in the executive room. One guard mentions the director griefed a higher up, asking if the shooter was going to catch a massive ban for the team kill. Just then, another guard patches the rumor, pointing out the target threw a toxic insult at the leader's kid first, completely flipping the context. Walking next to the kid, the director evaluates the zero-chill vibe he gave off during all that aggro. The commander recalls the kid's dialogue asking for forgiveness for the shock, and asks how he only cared about his cosmetic skin. Even though he ranks the behavior as totally toxic, the man realizes the UI wasn't showing the full picture. He warns that the server chat was already blowing up with rumors about the new here's actions. Staring at the kid's back, the instructor brings up the hype around the monthly banquet hosted for the low-level troops. Silent, he assumes the kid was just farming the noobs to build an obedient guild, proving he was a total menace. The strategist counters the flame with pure sarcasm, nodding that framing the lore like that definitely made him look like a toxic raid boss. With their slow footsteps echoing on the stone floor, the glasses guy decides to clear up a glitch that was heavily tilting him. Aiming his pistol straight at the kid's face, the commander demands to know the real hidden agenda behind that team kill in the meeting room. Keeping his cool despite the fatal hitbox warning, the kid interrupts the officer, claiming he scripted that entire cutscene on purpose. The man lowers the gun a few pixels, clearly shook that his red was countered so fast. Holstering the weapon, the director demands the kid leak the exact patch notes of what he meant by that flex. Flashing a confident smirk, the strategist announces their political meta was way too obvious to not get instantly countered. He points out the Lord desperately wanted to permanently ban anyone who had the balls to flame his dead partner's lore. Since he held the top admin spot, the commander had to fake a neutral alignment to avoid triggering a server-wide mutiny. But the true hair spawning in at the perfect frame gave the boss the ultimate excuse to pop his ult in defense of the family. The hidden message behind that shot was crystal clear. Anyone who trolled the sun would catch an instant permaban. The kid speed reads the room, figuring the glasses commander and the leader had already queued up this team kill strat before the lobby even opened. The secret admin command was to mute the first council member who acted toxic near the kid, setting a hard example for the rest of the server. Because of that, the professor's fake griefing basically deleted any future complaints about the bastard hair camping in the base. Mind blown by the kid's galaxy, brain read, the director reminds him he was still technically flagged as an enemy, asking if the young guy wasn't trusting him way too fast. Walking backward, the kid admits his spawn location would definitely be a massive debuff for the players simping for the leader's current wife. But he doubles down, flexing that he also shared the Lord's DNA and fully intended to complete the contract they signed. Strolling through the lighting effects of the corridor, the kid boldly announces he was going to hijack the ultimate admin spot of the barracks. The commander glares at his wife, swearing he'd finally unlock her freedom patch. Far from that cutscene, the director admits to the kid that his only anchor was the Lord's actual romance stats for the dead girl. Remembering the meeting room's PvP, the officer praises the kid's god-tier political mechanics. He asks about the meta of feeding the noob soldiers every month, noticing the kid was faking a shy emote about the topic. When the officer pushes to know if there was a hidden quest tied to it, the strategist notices the guy took the bait perfectly. Seeing his rep meter go up, the boy announces he was thinking about solo crafting the entire feast himself. The glasses guy nods, agreeing that the cooking mini-game was a classic, top-tier strat for power, leveling loyalty with NPCs. The MC understands he didn't need to force the kids into his guild, since toxic forced parties never lasted long in this server. So, his ultimate master plan was to slowly prove he was actually a support main for the troop. That way, when the real server wipe event dropped, the battalion of kids would carry him without questioning a single ping. Cutting off the kid's theory crafting, the director turns around and launches a new dialogue tree. He offers to co-op the prep phase, asking if he should pick the consumables or help out in the cooking UI. The young guy replies super cold that he needed a carry to hunt mobs, leaving the commander completely lagging. Flashing a confident smirk, the successor reveals that farming the mobs was actually the real phase 1. Locking in the quest, he demands the officer join his party to farm crafting mats in the frozen wilderness. Trudging through the deep snow outside the safe zone, the director complains that this queue was an absolute troll move. He thinks it's completely broken that they were scouting such a high-level danger zone equipped with just a standard issue rifle. Ignoring the toxic comms, the boy tells the man to mute his mic, claiming it was just a basic farming run with 0 high-level threats. When the guy drops a sarcastic emote asking if the professor was scared, the man instantly snaps back that the hare literally wasn't allowed to take chip damage. The actual reason for his panic was knowing for a fact the clan leader would hand him a brutal game over if the kid respawned with a single scratch. Dropping a massive sigh, the officer admits he still couldn't process the meta behind this ice-walking simulator. The strategist argues the feast buff gives way more loyalty points when the chef grinds the loot drops himself. The glasses guy agrees the lore sounds epic, but flags a massive physics bug in the whole setup. Fully tilting, he screams that the kid has literally 0 hours logged in hunting, and any glitch out here would tank his own admin score. Spamming his flawless excuse, the guy blames the Lord's genetics, leaving the commander salty over the cheap RNG justification. To farm more salt, the guy claims he's hunted barehanded before and tells the professor to camp behind him if he was too scared of the mobs. Internally, the boy knows soloing the mobs would be way more optimized, but he had a god-tier reason for dragging the salty boomer along. He needed the professor to act as a spectator when he started one-shotting raid bosses later on. Right then a low-level horned rabbit crosses their path, acting as the perfect tutorial mob to test his DPS. But the boy totally breaks the script by drawing a blade and announcing the small mob wasn't the main objective, leaving his party member completely confused. Without lagging for a frame, the boy slashes his own palm, sending the professor's panic meter through the roof. Equipping the rifle right after, he commands the commander to hold his comms so the noise wouldn't aggro the actual raid boss. With his crosshairs locked on the dark woods, the guy uses a serious voice chat to announce the massive beast was already entering their rendered distance. A heavy earthquake effect from massive footsteps shakes the snow, revealing giant hitboxes pushing through the trees. The director is completely stunned as he identifies the mutant pig boss model clipping through the fog. Panicking, the man asks why a high-tier mob spawned here, since they usually had scripts to run away from player characters. Assuming it was an aggro variant, the commander pings to fall back, but the strategist just orders him not to rage quit yet. Checking the digital UI, the boy confirms the beast had coward AI and only tracked low-level hitboxes to avoid catching a ban. The professor guesses the bleed damage acted as bait, but asks why they didn't just use the dead rabbit to spoof the lure. Hard scoping with the rifle. The kid explains the mob's maxed out perception stat would make it flee if it sniffed even a pixel of gunpowder. Even though he's impressed by the galaxy, brain red, the man orders the boy to fall back, since the lack of a full party meant they were in the red zone. Ignoring the sweaty warning, the MC discreetly pops his legacy aimbot title through the hidden menu. Catching the fresh blood debuff in the wind, the massive mutant pig triggers its aggro animation and charges violently at the duo. On the exact frame of the attack, a glowing tracer rips through the freezing wind straight into the beast's hitbox. With the barrel still smoking, the young guy flashes a hype smile, feeling the adrenaline pumping after that flawless first clear. The pixel-perfect collision bypasses the mob's armor stat, guaranteeing the boss was deleted in a fraction of a second. The army professor spectates the whole clip totally stun-locked, with zero ability to input a command. Lowering his weapon super chill, the boy asks casually if that mob drop was enough to craft the main dish. Way later, the sunlight renders over the massive military base where the promised co-op event was finally going down. Passing the main gate, the squad of noob soldiers zones in with totally confused facial animations. A massive table loaded with consumables waits for them, while the host politely drops a tie for everyone joining the lobby. Wearing a basic chef cosmetic, the hero announces he farmed a ton of premium meat and wanted to max out their party synergy from here on out. The heavy spawn in vibe vanishes instantly when the starving kids rush the hot platters packed with actual high-tier food. Away from the main hub, the blonde kid and his redhead duo run support on the grills, salty that the party leader wasn't even touching the food. The strategist flips the meat on the BBQ, listening to the endless toxic comms from his two unlucky teammates. Out of nowhere, a glitchy redhead guy spawns in, doing a massive theatrical bow to greet the trio. Using super loud voice chat, the new spawn drops a cursed gamer tag and tries to force an instant friend request on the fanboy. The fanboy panics at the broken personal space and complains to the party leader for not transferring this troll to the barracks too. The blonde jumps into the flame war, warning that the noob couldn't even aim down sights properly in such a hardcore server. Freaking out, the weird dude stutters that he literally has 0 points in firearms, catching toxic heat for calling himself a gamer. The strategist instantly drops a ban warning on the noob, ordering him to mute his mic before an NPC guard logged the word player. Emitting a sigh of relief for dodging a stealth check fail, the MC demands they start dumping useful data means about the zone. The weird kid flexes that he secured a pet role in the boss's mansion and was getting carried hard by the high-tier NPCs. When the squad leader asks if he looted any valid lore drops nearby, the noob's expression instantly swaps to a serious aesthetic. Building up massive hype, the troll leaks that one of the highest DPS officers in the base was running a secret romance side quest. Disappointed by the trash tier leak, the strategist completely ghosts the kid and asks the blonde about the upcoming raid. The soldier confirms there's a huge RNG chance the noob recruits would get hot, dropped into the front lines for the upcoming expansion. Scanning the weather effects, the MC figures the server event would only trigger when the snow melted, giving the guild a massive grace period to grind. Locked in on the main quest, he asks if his redhead duo managed to loot anything OP, quickly canceling the raid chatter. Equipping the space Rocky Ninja, looted from the grave, the leader orders his two supports to click the relic for a quick hardware check, but he instantly notices their UI didn't update at all. Realizing the magic activation exploit was totally patched for them, he leaks to the party that he bypassed the system locks using the ring, and guesses this was the universal key for all the other safe zones too. Checking his team's reactions, the boy concludes that the admin rights to join the global chat were hard, capped to 1 user per zone. The blonde kid goes into full panic over the chance of getting soft locked without magic buffs, but the strategist tells him to lower his mic volume immediately. To defuse the aggro, the leader breaks down that the system only unlocked basic menace, and the global chat was the only feature that would actually break the meta later. The MC calculates there are currently only 8 active users pinging in the global chat. This 100% confirmed that there were still AFK players scattered across the other unmapped regions of the game. Keeping this logic in the crosshairs, he starts drafting the next sequence of speedrun strats for this server. The boy quickly wonders what the imposter's coordinates were, while the blonde asks why the leader had his camera locked on him randomly. Since everyone was running incognito mode, The strategist plans to drop his namatag soon to farm favors and premium loot. Playing defense, the blonde recruit points out that the toxic troll would never drop real lore and reminds him he was the first to leak intel. Pointing at the banquet, the redhead notes everyone was using standard eating animations, proving there were no more stealth players camping here. Flipping the BBQ, the leader nods that the three of them were definitely the only randoms trapped solo in the cola zone. But he hits a dramatic pause and admits he has a totally unhinged theory about the hidden lore of this combat zone. Skipping the intro, the boy drops the theory that the famous dead mom was probably an IRL gamer who got isekai'd. The two supports are absolutely mind blown to hear the server's legacy NPC was actually a human player just like them. The guy admits he doesn't have hard screenshots yet, but guesses she must have been an Asian player too, since the NPCs thought their character models looked identical. Right then, he remembers the character design of the commander's current wife, noticing she shared heavily reused assets with the dead ex. On top of that, the woman was tagged as the grand savior of the raid, making the blonde ally super curious about the stat. The redhead fanboy Speed connects the dots, remembering that title was an exclusive achievement locked to players and never dropped for native NPCs. The strategist warns that the most broken piece of evidence to confirm his massive theory hadn't even loaded in yet. Flashing back to his cutscene with the commander, he details that the woman also rocked the exact same OP auto heal passive the party had. Rocking a hype smile, the leader declares there was a massive Easter egg buried here, getting super eager for the bloody clan war that was coming. Absolutely terrified, the two supports have a meltdown, begging the boy to chill out and stop spamming that creepy villain smile. Suddenly, the weird noob clips closer trying to fix the vibe, claiming the woman's lore wasn't the only crazy plot twist in the zone. Shifting focus, the MC starts inspecting the mysterious glowing jewel he looted from the old savior's grave. In the vanilla game, this tiny ring only ever functioned as a purely cosmetic skin with 0 stat buffs. But the kid verifies through his HUD that the magic relic was constantly spamming an active charisma buff on nearby NPCs. Chilling in his dark dorm room, the hare notices the item radiated a super cozy warmth every time the lord entered his rendered distance. However, the second the guy walked out of range, the jewel instantly dropped in temperature, almost like it was taking emotional damage from the disconnect. Checking the engine rules, he is 100% sure this charisma multiplier only altered the aggro table of the local NPCs. Staring at the blinding glow of the jewel, the boy suspects the actual consciousness of the woman might be trapped inside the code of the item. Tanking a massive headache, he wonders who the hell could code such a heavy emotional mechanic into the game artificially. Gripping the jewel tight, a much more terrifying theory starts taking over his combat calculations. Back in the courtyard, he pings his team that the physics of this server were looking totally different from everything they datamined about the game. The blonde kid goes into a full mental crash, asking if all the OG walkthroughs the leader crafted were just going to be useless junk files now. Countering fast, the leader confirms the guides were still viable, and that anyone who failed the quick time events would still catch a permanent ban. The noob finds it super sus that only this specific hero's lore got patched in the game's directory files. Holding his cold drink, the MC figures if the woman was human, someone got dropped into this lobby way before their squad did. The recruit shivers in pure fear as notifications spam his HUD, showing the global difficulty scaling in completely unscripted ways. Screaming in panic, the duo partner begs them to just focus on stopping the server wipe instead of grinding for massive Easter eggs. Keeping his focus, the successor details that the main quest was still locking in a slot in the massive military raid against the mobs. He points out that just participating in the first wave would trigger a brand new system buff just for returning to the lobby alive. While the cowardly recruit tries to trade his party slot with the hyped-up noob, the leader decides to keep the redhead safely AFK at the base. Scanning the hazard levels of the incoming raid, the strategist confirms he needed to leave at least one unkillable backup parked in the safe zone. Even while setting up this defensive strat, he flashes a smug emote, guaranteeing he absolutely would not get wiped in that battle. Inside the premium dorm room, the blonde complains about the map change, guessing the kid just wanted to flex his new whale tier lifestyle. Ignoring his duo's salty attitude, the young hare casually equips a tiny metal dessert fork. The allies just stare at the dessert platter, completely failing to figure out the mechanics of using premium utensils. Smoothly moving the cookie to his hitbox, the leader commands them to focus on the actual physics of eating right now. Chilling on the edge of the massive bed, the young guy remembers he wanted to trigger a meeting between the two rival clan leaders without sending individual invites. Flashing an absolutely cryptic expression, he decides the ultimate cheese strat to force this collab was to trigger a massive server-wide griefing event across the whole military base. The MC, logged in as Dopamine Junkie, drops a salty sigh at a certain player relentlessly spamming his DMs. Through the text UI, he asks if the stubborn guy had ever accepted a random friend request in past playthroughs. Right after, he trolls the guy, asking if he didn't just blindly mash the accept button like a total brain dead noob. On the other end, the forum banned user swears he'll delete his account the second he escapes this cursed lobby. Finding the toxic rage hilarious, the strategist tags the opponent as a low-level mob that was too easy to kite from a distance. But he pauses, wondering how the fake hero of the barracks actually datamined his chat logs with this raging troll. Running a security check to see if his account got hacked, he reads the buddy's reply swearing he only gave one-word answers to the imposter. Next, the leader asks if the faker's AI behavior seemed glitched, but the contact confirms the dude was always a total weirdo by default. Even with that RNG factor, the partner swears on his life the fake was camping in the high-tech unicorn zone. Refusing to just accept that drop rate without proof, the kid demands a clear screenshot to validate this random intel. The user then explains he ran a trade window with the guy, and the entire transaction was paid in solid gold bars. Processing this premium loot drop, the strategist realizes how broken that kind of wealth is in a post-apocalyptic server, because, in a meta where basic crafting mats were zeroed out, that researcher zone was the only known exploit to the rule. Swaying over max defense, the NPCs there built the entire hub in the skybox, coding an unrateable tech defense system. Thanks to that exclusive survival mechanic, the vanilla world map probably only survived uncorrupted in that aerial zone. Stacking all these random lore drops, the imposter camping in the unicorn zone turns into a 100% confirmed fact for the kid. When his duo asks if he plans to run a scouting mission, the guy calmly states he's staying AFK on that quest for now. His galaxy brain strat was to let the faker grind the progression, and then totally wipe his inventory when he raided the zone later. Failing to grasp this complex confidence, the partner warns that the enemy had the best route unlocked and was admin of the most secure zone. Hearing the panicked comms, the young hare just drops a toxic laugh while staring at his mini UI monitor. He reminds his duo that every single survivor in this server was literally just copy, pasting the exact walkthroughs he wrote from scratch. Flexing his massive ego over his strats, he finds it hilarious that his contact treats a win here like some impossible achievement. The partner totally panics as his coward stats are exposed, but the commander points out he was the user who downloaded his guides the most. Dying of cringe from getting called out, the partner grumbles, trying to process the sudden mood swings of the grand strategist. Running the DPS calculations cold, the boy estimates his actual win rate against the fake hare hovered right around 60% currently. Even with all his magical hair buffs active, the massive tech gap between the servers was a mechanic he literally couldn't ignore. Shutting down the boring chat, he orders his partner to drop a ping if the faker sends anything, finding the toxic guy's sudden obedience super sus. Back in the dead silence of the premium dorm, the leader snaps his focus back to the fresh notifications spamming his floating GUD. Right then, the redhead fanboy drops a DM warning that the guy in the secret knife zone was role-playing as the actual idol. Exploiting this tiny pause in the chat, the desperate partner begs to get carried during the future raid on the sky base. The fanboy admits he just wanted to ride his OP idol's coattails, getting a promise that his application would be reviewed later. Hard pivoting the chat, the kid orders his ally to immediately scout if the invisible firewall blocking the zones had actually crashed. Checking the coordinates on his minimap, he knows the scouting area was right next to the hardcore PvP zone. If that primary shield was actually offline, the low-level noobs trapped in the squishy zones were about to get violently spawn-camped. Staring at the black system screen, the strategist notices his contact mysteriously went offline without sending a single reply. Dropping his head on the premium pillow, he decides he literally doesn't care about the raids, since he had zero intention of catching a game over from anyone. Bright and early the next day, the heavy snow keeps masking the stone roofs of the military base as the server resets for daily tasks. The heavy crunch of tactical boots sinks into the white, freezing textures during the scout squad's long escort mission. Spamming complain emotes the whole walk, the blonde cadet begs to be kicked from these special events, totally burned out by the squad's sweaty grind. The military commander announces a live fire tutorial for gathering mats and crystals outside the safe zone, making the hair drop a bored sigh. The kid finds the instructor's wholesome smile aimed at the whining blonde super weird, remembering his due already hit level 20 IRL. Catching the silent judgment from a distance, the cadet drops a salty emote, hating the review he was getting from the veteran NPC. Still vibrating from the frost debuff, the soldier asks if it was safe to leave the hub without a full raid party, getting a promise that it was just a quick run. The glasses guy leaks that the guards spotted a heavily damaged raid boss this morning, making the loot run way easier for the squad. If the hair's god, tier mechanics were actually legit like the server rumors claimed, the instructor was 100% sure they'd clear the quest with 0 wipes. Validating the boomer's massive gamble, the kid just hits a cold nod while reloading his rifle with high damage AP rounds. Checking out a glitchy loot drop in his hand, the blonde asks if those star-shaped bullets were actually meant to be consumable food for the recruits. The commander happily drops the lore that the ration maxed out stamina despite tasting like absolute garbage, then asks if the cadet had any healing spells. With a tiny pixel of hope, the recruit declares he could even cast AoE heals on teammates if his mana regen was stable, totally surprising the strategist. Failing to read the amazed, direct stare from his misery buddy, the blonde kid finds the commander's sudden, smug smile completely cursed. Giving him a light pat on the shoulder, the kid hypes up his support's top-tier progression theory, crafting how OP it would be to have a pocket medic of that level. Even without datamining the kid's toxic plans, the military guy just turns his head, sensing his grind was about to get doubled. Pushing a bit deeper into the dark, frozen forest biome, the trio finally spots the colossal, razor-plated beast lagging on the path. Scanning the massive raid boss carefully, the cadet quickly pings a huge debuff wound on the monster's right flank. Reading the KO'd creature's positioning, the squad calculates its base armor stat based on how its thick front legs were placed. Stacking all these hitbox clues, the strategist aims down sights, calling out that the boss's crit core was hidden in its left abdominal area. Without wasting a single frame on distractions, the glowing bullet rips through the wind instantly, shattering the chill of the falling snow. The director spectates the perfect headshot completely shook, confirming the kid hit the hidden weak point under the heavy armor with pixel-perfect aimbot. Super hyped about the clean clear, the military man orders the cadet to pop a flare to summon the support team and haul the premium drops back to base. Lowering the rifle smoothly, the hair flexes that this mechanic saved rare ammo and kept the armor plating at 100% durability for crafting. Flashing a totally genuine, chill smile, the instructor confirms the kid definitely inherited the old Legends OP genes, making the boy go completely pale. The man admits he thought the kid was sus before, but now celebrates the W, while the leader seriously questions the weird NPC's mental stability. Freaked out by this massive energy spike in the middle of the woods, the kid suggests they fast, travel back to the barracks to play it safe. Before he can even finish his warning comms, a high-pitch audio glitch tearing through the skybox steals his attention, making him look straight up. Clipping through the gray atmosphere in a high-tech flying mount, a random player hot drops, demanding the blonde cadet step up immediately. The glowing, futuristic vehicle lands on the soft snow with flawless physics, kicking up a massive cloud of frost right next to the squad. Watching the griefer jump out of the mount, the sidekick's eyes bug out as he clocks the newcomer's skin, dashing back in pure terror. With zero lobby etiquette, the stranger blasts the strategist's gamer tag in voice chat, locking his heavy aggro straight onto the kid. The intruder rocks messy hair in a sharp, borderline feral aesthetic, wearing ultra-premium cosmetics that clash violently with this scuffed server. His insanely pale skin perfectly matches his stark white coat, proving this was a whale who definitely wasn't taking any starvation debuffs. For the sweats who truly understood the meta, that sharp face was iconic and instantly triggered pure terror in the server's top-ranked players. Absolutely paralyzed by the boss-level threat, the blonde duo cowers behind the director, spamming requests for a shield against the weird new spawn. Swapping to a frontline tank stance instantly, the army commander orders his squad to hold position and wait for his pings before making a move. Giving zero cares about the local NPCs pointing guns at him, the premium intruder walks on the ice, screaming to verify the guide creator's real ID. The guy grabs the kid's arm with insane grip strength. The coward partner yells from afar that he was targeting the wrong hitbox. Keeping his crosshairs on the redhead, the premium player trolls him, asking how the fanboy failed to recognize his own idol standing right there. Scanning the guy's silhouette against the lighting, the MC instantly deduces this player hijacked the identity of the legendary dopamine junkie. The heavy tension in the server makes the kid stare down the newcomer with massive anxiety. Hyper, focusing his camera on every available pixel. Moving with buttery smooth frames, the intruder takes off his gloves, announcing they just needed to check the profile UI to end the whole mystery. The system's virtual panel gets name dropped instantly, making it obvious that everyone's true stats would get leaked right now. But the young strategist completely freezes when he notices a massive physics glitch in this chaotic cutscene. Checking the man's height slider, the kid realizes the guy was using the exact same character proportions he rocked in the real world. The dude's boss, Level Presence, throws a massive error in the here's brain about why he was the only player forced to play as a kid. Stopping next to the blonde, the adult points a finger and challenges the cadet to finally ID him, dropping his legacy gamertag. With a subtle emote, the intruder brags that the kid was way faster at determining his true identity. That massive disrespect shatters the silence of the clearing, dropping a huge stun debuff on everyone in the AoE. Completely surrounded, the guy in the coat sarcastically asks why the whole squad was aiming their loadouts at him so fast. Trying to de-escalate the aggro, he drops a toxic promise that he wasn't there to wipe anyone in the party. Refusing to fall for the griefer's bait, the successor raises his rifle, locking his aimbot perfectly, and mutters a complaint about the cringe monologue. Seeing the rifle locked on him, the guy taunts that the kid was too tilted to even open the basic UI menu. Triggered by the flame, the strategist internally admits the rival made a fair point about his lag in checking the stats. Taking the L on the delay, he boots up the virtual screen and reads with pure shock that the guy's data actually tagged him as dopamine junkie. Completely mind blown by the interface, the kid's CPU can't process how this random managed to steal his god-tier gamertag. The thing that terrified the kid the most was seeing the official system UI perfectly copying his famous handle pixel for pixel. From across the map, the man demands a status update on the stat check, while the hare tries to buffer the existence of this cloned tag. Skipping the dialogue tree, the MC demands to know what exploit the imposter used to hack the game's code. With a hyper-focused aesthetic, he demands the lore behind the spoof tag, but the intruder skips the prompt, saying it wasn't the right patch for that yet. Having zero patience for trolls, the kid aims his gun at the sky, warning he needed to run a crucial fact check before the chat continued. Recalling the IRL player's toxic nature, the hare finds it super glitchy that the intruder was roaming around with totally useless support players. Analyzing the player's movement, the kid suspects he was emoting way too hard to RP as the guide's creator. Out of nowhere, the blonde cadet snaps his fingers with a lightbulb emote, thinking he finally cracked the massive puzzle of this cutscene. Running a huge theatrical taunt, the partner yells angrily, asking why the intruder was the only one running an adult character model. The guy just stares at his support with heavy judgment, thinking it's absolute trash. Tier that the sidekick only noticed that massive visual bug just now. Backing up the hare's read, the white-haired guy declares the blonde was way too low IQ to be a viable support main. Fixing his cosmetics with pure indifference, the intruder decides the optimal play is to just permanently ban the blonde kid from the server. Running purely on PvP instinct, the strategist spams his heavy rifle's trigger instantly to cast a defensive zone. Matching the frame data, the stranger counters immediately, popping a heavy pre-fire shot from his light sidearm. The blonde partner goes into full panic, dragging the kid back and flaming him for trying to trade hits with a fully geared whale. The deflected bullet hits the snow texture with zero audio, proving the enemy's defense stat was ridiculously broken. Wrapped in a high-tech glowing shield, the man proves he couldn't get one-shotted by the server's standard issue weapons. Checking out his glowing armor, the guy in the coat praises the kid's pre-fire reflexes, admitting he would have run the exact same input. Smug about his DPS flex, the intruder hops back into his flying mount, announcing the stat check was over, leaving the hare totally confused. Gripping the rifle hard, the kid listens to the stranger claim He only wanted to spectate if his clone was leveling up correctly. Blinded by absolute rage while aiming down sights, the kid admits he'd love to send this guy to the lobby right now. But the tech shield blocked it. Locking his boots on the futuristic vehicle, the giant man fakes remembering a super vital quest item before extracting. Aiming his barrel, he drops a cold-blooded warning that he still owed the noob a tiny parting gift. The blonde kid, totally blue, screams in panic when he realizes the enemy's crosshairs were locked straight on them. With a frame-perfect dash, the hare pushes his ally in the opposite direction the exact millisecond the gunshot audio booms through the forest. Because of the sudden hitbox shift, the kid ends up tanking the shot directly in the shoulder, making the support scream in absolute horror at the graphic. From the top of his mount, the faker watches his critical hit land, keeping his character animation completely ice cold. Scanning the kid's debuff, the intruder whispers a salty line that the boy definitely wasn't on his level. As the adult clips away into the cloudy skybox, the redhead ally screams in pure despair, spamming chat for his wounded master. The army commander executes a speed run check, relieved to see the bullet didn't clip any of the hare's vital hitboxes. Taking the admin role, the officer orders the cadet to hold the perimeter against mobs while he spammed for a medic, getting an instant "Highs, sir," tanking the massive burn damage in his shoulder. The strategist grunts while the blonde partner heavily supports his weight on the dirt. Crying buckets, the cadet screams that the fake gamer was an absolute psycho, forcing the kid to ping that his HP wasn't 0 yet. Totally tilted, the blonde asks why the hare face tanked a bullet just to peel for a useless noob like him. Keeping his aesthetic 100% chill, the MC reverses the prompt, telling the support to actually use his brain to guess the meta. Raising the OP consumable in his good hand, the kid drops a hard command for his partner to cast his healing spell right now. The blonde kid gets completely stun-locked, realizing the boy purposely caught a bullet just to beta test his healing skill IRL. Furious at the calculated sociopath play, the recruit shakes his duo, calling him completely unhinged for running a strat like that. Ignoring the coward's toxic comms, the hare just grabs the ration and demands the healing animation start immediately. Demanding his carry fee for saving the kid's life, the strategist announces he had to drop a massively important lore bomb. Using a hand emote, he orders his blonde partner to step into his hitbox to hear the secret with max focus. After processing the low-volume audio, the cadet's eyes bug out in shock, asking for the true gamertag of the guy who just peeled for him. Watching the panic, the strategist holds his chill idle animation, waiting for the partner to finish buffering the insane lore. The blonde screams the player's digital tag at max volume, tilted that he was getting trolled the whole time and demanding to know why the leak took so long. Clenching his bleeding hitbox, the hare complains that the terrified support would have never partied up early on if he knew the truth. The healing VFX starts glowing over the wound, but the boy commands him to cancel the cast so the troop boss wouldn't get sus about a full HP bar. Still salty about the griefing, the ally complains that the redhead fanboy already had the VIP lore while he was left looking like a total clown. The boy defends the strat, saying the fanboy had a leaker, while the blonde asks angrily what the server gained by people spoofing the leader. Scanning the threat level, the MC warns that the over-leveled adult imposter was infinitely more toxic than the squishy faker from before. Pulling up his virtual UI, he explains the intruder unlocked the external chat mod and abused his tag to scam the rest of the lobby. But the ultimate game-breaking bug was that the man's physical fast travel proved the firewalls separating the zones were actually down. The commander figures they need to beta test this mechanic IRL, but flags that the ultimate raid boss was the enemy rocking a fully maxed adult avatar. Pitching a quick theory, the cadet asks if the guy exploited the zone's premium tech to speed hack his own biological growth. The hero instantly shoots down the theory when he spots a dark glitch mark on his wrist, claiming there was a way more cursed reason for the model swap. Flashing a highly stressed emote, he admits he has zero data means on what that dark lore actually is so far. Trapped in a loop of calculations, the kid finds it totally broken that the faker hijacked his tag, but noticed the visitor's skin looked weirdly similar to his own. He gets super salty remembering the guy's toxic taunt about spectating his progression, feeling his aggro spike just from reviewing the VOD. Rushing through the snow with crying animations, the fanboy clips close, completely shook, dropping the ping that the rescue squad was finally entering render distance. Still getting carried by his ally on the dirt, the The successor just watches his partner's panic animation without changing his own face model. Using low-volume voice chat, the strategist tells the cadet they'd resume this hardcore lore dump later in a private lobby. With that, the boss orders neither of them to leak the event logs and commands the fanboy to lock his camera only on the incoming soldiers. Back inside the premium borders of the base, the NPCs start whispering about the rescue squad's super weird spawn animation. The soldiers drop shocked voice lines about the commander's zero empathy, noticing he didn't even trigger a panic emote when seeing the wounded hare. Taking the W on his ice-cold reputation, the kid is secretly super hyped he unlocked the healing tab on his virtual panel. Locked in the dark dorm, the director screams in pure rage, trying to datamine who dared to grief the kid's HP like that. Staring at the outside skybox through the glass, the young master claims he doesn't have the shooter's gamer tag, calculating every dialogue option perfectly. Holding an ultra-chill aesthetic, he admits he used to have the guy on his friends list back in the day, but his current status was offline. The Glass's commander instantly solves the puzzle, guessing the sniper was just some toxic ex-party member from before the server rollback. Internally, the kid is 100% sure the director uploaded the entire log to the Supreme Boss, including the Korean translation for gamer, to make sure his speedrun stayed flawless without getting dragged into the Soldier Academy. The strategist knew he had to keep his stealth stats maxed. Running the math on the sky, boss enemy, the boy decides he needs to wipe any suspicion from the commander's RAM instantly. Hitting the perfect dialogue prompt, he claims some random new noob player must have spawned in, misdirecting the aggro away from the real griefer. Totally baited by the massive lie, the director runs the theory and nods that the kid's RNG guess was actually solid. The UI confirms the speech check was a critical success, letting the MC drop his stress levels for successfully scamming the NPC so fast. But the chill vibe gets deleted when the commander flatly states the hare was getting transferred to the Combat Academy anyway. Dropping the patch notes for his choice, the guy says the squishy kid hitbox responsible for the damage, completely ignoring the boy's magic HP regen. Stress rubbing the kid's head, the professor warns that one missed QTE could cost him his save file, just like it did his spawn mom. Turning his back, the commander acknowledges the speedrun timer and promises he wouldn't force a full 6-year tutorial grind. The only quest objective was to max out his movement mechanics before the next clan war, securing a high-tier rank without tanking his rep. Reading the political meta, the kid accepts the temp ban to the training barracks as just an AFK healing phase. With absolute max confidence, he swears to stay in the military academy only long enough to learn how to dodge a bullet, leaving the NPC totally stun-locked. Meanwhile, the server vibe inside the classroom gets insanely heavy with the system announcement that the warlord's son was joining the lobby. The veteran players rage about the massive L of 6 cadets getting clapped in the PvP arena by a literal 10-year-old noob, completely tilted by the humiliation. The guys regret dragging the server's rank, one student into this cursed raid. Keeping a solid boss stance, the rookie leader clears his party of the throw, praising their massive guts for taking the PvP head-on. Standing at the front, the Glass's professor demands everyone mute their mics and orders the high-level strats to remain under NDA. Tanking the orders quietly because they were dealing with the OP hare, the students get yanked back to reality by the officer's loud voice chat. Holding the entire room's aggro, the director announces he had a top priority server update to drop. The cadet leader squints his eyes, pre-firing the red that a massive hardcore quest was about to be forced on the lobby. Standing next to the instructor, the tiny hare drops his intro rocking the official clan cosmetics, ready to kick off his ranked placements here. Scanning the toxic aggro from the veterans in the back, the strategist flexes massive confidence against the incoming skill check. Going into a total panic state, the students internally freak out, terrified of becoming meme clips if they share a lobby with the dreaded noob. Before the toxic chat takes over, the officer reminds the lobby the kid already proved his high DPS in combat, muting the trolls with an iron fist. Rejecting this forced meta peacefully, the prodigy student stands up from his setup politely and requests mic access to 1v1 the intruder. Equipping a toxic stance, the rookie agrees the soldiers who threw were absolute trash, but guarantees his own stats are infinitely better. The sweaty atmosphere swallows the room as the two high IQ players trade heavy glares packed with pure ranked energy. Far from getting a fear debuff from the open challenge, the hare tanks the aggro while keeping his hyper-calculated, stealth aesthetic intact. Shattering the heavy vibe, the kid drops a sarcastic emote, asking if this whole squad of hard, stuck losers actually thought they could wipe him. Flexing his admin VIP status, he cools the room down by pointing out the Grand Lord already had full logs of his OP strategy mechanics. Pushing his hitbox forward, the boy suggests they finish this PvP right now to perma, mute the salty students. Throwing down a 1v1 invite, the strategist demands a fresh duel in the training hub against the student leader. Hyped by the insane disrespect, the veteran rookie accepts the cue instantly, calling the kid delusional for his toxic confidence. To balance the MMR, the student suggests a squad-based skirmish, splitting the teams for a classic team deathmatch in the center arena. Leaning his hands heavily on the desk, the young hare accepts the custom game rules without showing a single pixel of doubt. But the friendly lobby vibe crashes fast when the rookie announces he'd only ready up if they locked in a specific hardcore modifier. Pointing at the tactical board, he declares his team would forfeit instantly if even one single member of his squad got eliminated. But, dropping an absolute flashbang on the veterans, the strategist announces that as long as a single enemy still had HP, his own team would take the W. Hit with massive emotional damage from the ultimate disrespect, the top student furiously asks if the kid was intentionally griefing their skill levels.